2-year-old Cash Hyde was diagnosed last year with a stage 4 brain tumor. He nearly died more times than his family can count and was miserable from the high-dose chemo coursing through his tiny body until his dad turned to a controversial place and gave cannabis to his young son.
The past couple of years have led to a number of firsts for marijuana. The latest poll from the General Social Survey represents the first time in history that a majority of respondents, over 52%, are in favor of legalizing the drug. Similar results can be viewed in the 2014 Gallup poll on marijuana, where 51% of respondents were in favor of legalization. However, we're seeing more than just the public opinion changing. States' laws are being transformed right before our eyes. In 2012, we witnessed Washington and Colorado becoming the first states to legalize marijuana on a recreational adult use basis. Since then, Oregon, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. have followed suit. Additionally, the number of states that have approved medical marijuana now sits at 23, compared to 0 just 20 years ago.
Sure. Well, this has been evolving for decades, starting with the first medical marijuana initiative that passed in California in 1996. We've just seen support for reforming marijuana laws increase just about 1 or 2 points a year, to the point now where the most recent Pew and Gallup surveys had support for legalization at 57 and 60%. So there's really been a tremendous increase. And I think it's based on the fact that people understand that marijuana isn't as bad as it was made out to be. Not saying it's without, some harms associated with it, but overall, given the grand scope of various substances and so on, they just realize that it isn't worth punishing individuals for using marijuana, and basically the changes in the law have followed that.
Potential legalization of marijuana has positive but differing implications for consumers and states. States looking to legalize marijuana are primarily focused on tax implications of the drugs. Legalizing marijuana opens legally grown product to substantial excise and local taxes, which states can use to close budget deficits and retain state employees. Consumers want to see the drug legalized because it's perceived to offer a number of medical benefits. Medical marijuana may be used to alleviate the symptoms of these conditions: anxiety, chronic pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia, glaucoma, insomnia, depression, cancer, HIV or AIDS, nausea, muscle spasms, Crohn's disease, epilepsy, seizures, stress, anorexia, ADD or ADHD, migraines, PMS, and neuropathy, and many others.
He was just your average happy little kid, and then he just started to get sick.
It was shortly before Cashie's second birthday when Dad Mike knew something wasn't right.
Oh, he started being very tired, sleeping a lot, very cranky. He started to throw up. We started taking him to the doctor, and the doctor would tell us that he had mono.
For 6 weeks, it was the same diagnosis over and over, but Mike refused to accept what doctors were telling him. He knew, like any parent would, that something was terribly wrong.
I was like, it feels like he's dying in my arms. We need to take him somewhere else, and so we took him to the ER, and that's when they did a CAT scan on him, and they found a 4.5 centimeter tumor in his brain.
In 2013, a survey in the New England Journal of Medicine found that about 8 in 10 doctors approved marijuana for medical use. About 92% that used it for medical purposes said that it alleviated symptoms of their serious medical conditions, which included but not limited to chronic pain, arthritis, migraines, and cancer.
And so on.
There was a recent op-ed in the LA Times by a gentleman named Robert McCune. He's out of Stanford Law. He's a social psychologist. He makes this idea about the concerns about legalization of marijuana. He draws these 2 points. He says, first, legalization is likely to reduce the average harm per dose of marijuana. Some of these reductions will be pharmacological, the result of better quality control and predictability in legal production. But he also says legalization can also be expected to increase the number of doses consumed simply because it'll be easier to obtain. In the end, total harm related to marijuana could rise even if the average harm per dose falls. What do you think about that logic?
Again, it gets back to what you see as the harms associated with marijuana, but to just for the sake of conversation concede that there may be some harms associated. I think, again, going back to the alcohol issue, you just have to compare the two. That assumption by that columnist is that there will be, more doses and therefore more harm. But how many doses of alcohol are there? And are some doses of alcohol being substituted for marijuana? Because if a dose of alcohol has more harm than a dose of marijuana, we're actually reducing harm in society if people have a dose of marijuana instead of a dose of alcohol. So you can't just look at marijuana by itself and say that we're increasing the level of harm in society. It's a much bigger picture and needs to be studied.
A week after we did this interview, Kashi was back in Salt Lake for scans, finding out he's cancer-free. He's back home in Missoula, back with his family, back to teasing his big brother Colty. Kashi will spend his third birthday like every kid should, with the fight of his life behind him.